Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakya Chakshuranmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Shtapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swaparantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuttapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sakvajatam Sahagana Raghunath Anvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parajana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakapatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so we'll continue reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 1. Which text are we starting on? 15. It's a good one. Everyone is a good one. Text 15. Panchajanyam Rishikesho Vivadattam Dhananjayaha Pandram Tatma Mahashankam Bhima Karma Vrikodaraha. The Lord Krishna blew his conch shell, called Panchajanya. Arjun blew his, the Devadatta, and Bhima, the voracious eater and performer of Herculean tasks, blew his terrific conch shell, called Pandram. Text 16 through 18. Ananta Vijayam Raja Kunti Putro Yudhishthiraha Nakula Sahadevascha Sugosho Manipushpaka Kashyascha Parameshvasa Shikhandi Cha Maharataha Drishtadyumno Viratascha Satya Kishcha Parjitiha Drupado Dropadeyascha Sarvasha Prithivipate Sobhadrascha Mahabahu Shankan Dadmu Britak Britak. Maharaj Yudhishthir, the son of Kunti, blew his conch shell, the Ananta Vijay, and Nakul and Sahadev blew the Sughosh and Manipushpaka. That great archer, the king of Kashi, the great fighter, Shikhandi, Drishtadyumna, and Virata, and the unconquerable Satyaki, Drupada, the sons of Draupadi, and the others, O king, such as the son of Subhadra, greatly armed, all blew their respective conch shells. Text 19. Sagoshotaratharashtranam Hridayani Vyadarayat Napascha Prithivim Chaira Tumaropyanunadayan. The blowing of these different conch shells became uproarious, and thus vibrating both in the sky and on the earth, it shattered the hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra. Text 20. Atavyavastitan drishtva dartarashtran kapidvajaha pravritte shastra sampate tanor udyamya pandavaha rishikesham tata vakyam idam ahamahipate. O king, at that time Arjun, the son of Pandu, who was seated in his chariot, his flag marked with Hanuman, took up his bow and prepared to shoot his arrows. Looking at the sons of Dhritarashtra, O king, Arjuna then spoke to Rishikesh, Krishna, these words. Text 21 to 22. Arjuna uvacha senayor upayor matye ratam stapaya mechuta yavad etan nariksheham yotu kamanavastitan karmaya sahayodhavyam asmin rana samudyame. Arjun said, O infallible one, please draw my chariot between the two armies so that I may say who is present here, who is desirous of fighting, and with whom I must contend in this great battle attempt. Text 23. Yotsyamanaviksheham ye tetra samagataha tartarashtrasya durbudher yudhe priya chakirshavah. Let me see those who have come here to fight, wishing to please the evil-minded son of Dhritarashtra. Text 24. Sanjaya uvacha evam ukto hrishikesho gudakeshena bharata senayor upayor madhye stapayat bharatottamam. Sanjaya said, O descendant of Bharat, being thus addressed by Arjuna, Lord Krishna drew up the fine chariot in the midst of the armies of both parties. Text 25. Bhishma Drona Pramukh Tata Sarvesham Cha Mahikshitam Uvacha Partha Pashyaitan Samavetan Kuruniti. In the presence of Bhishma, Drona, and all other chieftains of the world, Rishikesh, the Lord said, just behold, Partha, all the Kurus who are assembled here. So we'll go back to text 15. We can read the translation and purport. Panchajanyam Rishikesho Devadatam Dhananjaya Panjam Dadma Mahashankam Bhima Karma Vrikodaraha. Thus, then Lord Krishna blew his conch shell called Panchajanya. Arjuna blew his, the Devadatta, and Bhima, the voracious eater and performer of Herculean tasks, blew his terrific conch shell called Pandram. To purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Lord Krishna is referred to as Hrishikesh in this verse because he is the owner of all the senses. The living entities are part and parcel of him, and therefore the senses of the living entities are also part and parcel of his senses. The impersonalist cannot account for the senses of the living entities, and therefore they are always anxious to describe all living entities as senseless or impersonal. The Lord situated in the hearts of all living entities directs their senses. Does anybody know what Bhagavad Gita shloka that is? It's chapter 18. We can go there real quick if you want to see, because something really nice to note when you're reading Srila Prabhupada's purports. Everything that he's saying is verified by Shastra, so most often he makes certain points, and then, once you are knowledgeable in Shastra, you can see, oh, this is an exact point that he's mentioning. It's chapter 18, text, what is it, 60 something. Is it? Yes. Ishvara Sarvabhutanam Hrideshi Arjuna Tishtati Brahmayan Sarvabhutani Yantra Rudhani Mayaya. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjun, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy. So, sorry to detract from the purport, but it's a nice point. And once you learn more shlokas and study the scriptures, you really appreciate how Prabhupada is presenting everything. And then you're reading and you're like, oh, Prabhupada's making this point from Prahlad Maharaj in the Bhagavatam or later in the Bhagavad Gita. So, in Shastra. Okay, so the Lord, situated in the hearts of all living entities, directs their senses. 1861. But he directs in terms of the surrender of the living entity. And in case of a pure devotee, he directly controls the senses. Here on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, the Lord directly controls the transcendental senses of Arjuna, and thus his particular name of Hrishikesh. The Lord has different names according to his different activities. For example, his name is Madhusudana, because he killed the demon of the name Madhu. His name is Govinda, because he gives pleasure to the cows and to the senses. His name is Vasudev, because he appeared as the son of Vasudev. His name is Devaki Nandana, because he accepted Devaki as his mother. And his name is Yashoda Nandana, because he awarded his childhood pastimes to Yashoda at Vrindavan. His name is Parthasarathi, because he worked as a charioteer of his friend Arjuna. Similarly, his name is Hrishikesh, because he gave direction to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Arjuna is referred to as Dhananjaya in this verse because he helped his elder brother in fetching wealth when it was required by the king to make expenditures for different sacrifices. Similarly, Bhima is known as Vrikodara because he could eat as voraciously as he could perform Herculean tasks, such as killing the demon, Hridimba. So the particular types of conch shells blown by the different personalities on the side of the Pandavas, beginning with the lords, were all very encouraging to the fighting soldiers. On the other side, there were no such credits, nor the presence of Lord Krishna, the supreme director, nor that of the goddess of fortune. So they were predestined to lose the battle, and that was the message announced by the sound of the conch shells. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions? And that's relevant. What? How? Lord Chaitanya is saying there's no hard and fast rules to chant the holy names. Krishna has so many names. Yeah, I mean, this reminds me of being in Vrindavan at the temple for Mangala Arti. Instead of singing the Gurvastakam like we do at all of our other ISKCON temples, they sing Vibhavari Shesha, a bhajan written by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and it has all these names of Krishna. And one of them in there is Yashoda Nandana, but there's many other names. It's very sweet. Just reciting the names of Krishna is very nice. It's very purifying. And we can see in the Bhagavad Gita that certain names are spoken to elicit a certain meaning. Like sometimes Arjuna will refer to Krishna as Janardana or Hrishikesha, and it's because there's a certain mood or a certain feeling that Arjuna has or is experiencing, and then these names of Krishna, he's paying endearment to him, but also, kind of bringing out, an aspect that's there. And it's not just with Krishna, it's also with Arjuna. Krishna will speak and say, sometimes he'll call him the son of Pandu, or son of Kunti, and these are meaning different things to have him feel different ways. Jivadoya Prabhu was giving class yesterday, and he was talking about how Duryodhana was going to speak to Dronacharya and about the war, and he was mentioning different personalities, and one, for example, was he was mentioning Drupada, and instead of mentioning Drupada by name, he mentioned, actually he was talking about Drishtadyumna, who got a benediction to kill him, but he mentioned him as the son of Drupada rather than by his own name, because he had a dispute, a rivalry with Drupada. So just by saying, the son of Drupada, it bring out more like anger in him. He was trying to rile up the troops. So, the more you know the backstory of the Mahabharata and all these details, the more it really gains context. And that's what this whole first chapter is about, setting this scene of the Battle of Kurukshetra. All right, if anybody doesn't have anything, we could keep going on because there's a lot of short purports. Yeah, if anybody has any comments or questions, feel free at any time. Yeah, when we were reading this, that one stood out to me, text 411, but then the second part of that point, it'd be nice to pinpoint where it was. But yeah, it's a really nice thing that when you observe this fact that Srila Prabhupada does not speculate. He's speaking realized knowledge from what he's realized himself, what he's received from, Guru and the Parampara, and also what he's studied in the scriptures. And Srila Prabhupada has such a vast knowledge of the scriptures, but seemingly it's impossible to know every single shloka, every single point. The Bhagavatam, there's like 18,000 shlokas. So one could wonder, how is it that Prabhupada is always speaking points that can be connected to a shloka from, like, Prahlad Maharaj in the Bhagavatam, or Vitrasura in the Bhagavatam, all these things. It's because Srila Prabhupada he's realized he's on the spiritual plane, so therefore whatever he's speaking is in accordance with reality, so then it can always be verified by Shastra. So it's nice to read Prabhupada's purports in that way and see, okay, he's making this point and this ties to this. It always does in some shape or form. All right, text 16 through 18. King Yudhishthira, the son of Kunti, blew his conch shell, the Anantavijay, and Nakula and Sahadev blew the Sagosh in Manipushpaka. That great archer, the king of Kashi, the great fighter, Shikhandi, Drishtadyumna, Virata, and the unconquerable Satyaki, Drupada, the sons of Draupadi, and the others, O king, such as the son of Subhadra, greatly armed, all blew their respective conch shells. Purport. Sanjay informed King Dhritarashtra very tactfully that his unwise policy of deceiving the sons of Pandu and endeavoring to enthrone his own sons on the seat of the kingdom was not very laudable. That's the signs already clearly indicated that the whole Kuru dynasty would be killed in that great battle, beginning with the grandsire, Bhishma, down to the grandsons like Abhimanyu and others, including kings from many states of the world. All were present there, and all were doomed. The whole catastrophe was due to King Dhritarashtra, because he encouraged the policy followed by his sons. So Srila Prabhupada often points out that Dhritarashtra was materially blind, and he was also spiritually blind, because all these personalities are not ignorant fools like we have in this present day and age, that are just blind, that are saying, let's do this policy, let's do it. No, they're all conversant with Shastra, and there's different levels of Shastra. So, we speak of Shastra and we're speaking of the summum bonum, the absolute truth, the essence of reality, which is dealing with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna. But there's all sorts of different Shastras that depict Dharma of different gradations, dharmas for kshatriyas, for fighting, certain etiquette to be followed, the Manasamhita, all these different things. But they were all conversant in this, so they know what's right and what's wrong. But Duryodhana was very sly and cunning to orchestrate things in his own way. And he was very good at politics, to navigate and play certain things in certain ways in his favor. And Dhritarashtra, being favorable to his sons, was susceptible to that. And this was source of his demise, as Prabhupada just pointed out. So when Duryodhana was speaking to his army, he was saying, in text 10, he says, our strength is immeasurable and we are perfectly protected by grandfather Bhishma, where the strength of the Pandavas is carefully protected by Bhima is limited. I was reading in Bhagavad Prabhu's book. He does a summary study of the Bhagavad Gita, and he often gives commentaries from acharyas, which is very nice. And he describes how a lot of times he's taking purports and from Baladev Vidyabhushana and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. They have two prominent commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita. And they were saying this word, paryaptam, is Prabhupada translates as immeasurable. And he was saying that Baladev Vidyabhushana has also translated as immeasurable, but Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur actually translates it in the opposite way, because Sanskrit words often have various meanings depending on the context or how you look at it. So then, we read Prabhupada's translation. It says, our strength is immeasurable and we are perfectly protected by grandfather Bhishma, whereas the strength of the Pandavas carefully protected by Bhima is limited. So if you take the opposite context of that, Bhishma, if you know the Mahabharata, was very favorable to these Pandavas. He's very tied to them. So in one sense, what Duryodhana is saying is that, we have the greatest warrior Bhishma, but he's not going to fight to his full capability because he's tied into, being favorable to the sons of Pandu, the Pandavas. So in that sense, what he's really saying to his, to his warrior, the leader of his army, you have to fight extra hard because we can't expect everything from Bhishma. So it's a very interesting point how this has like a double meaning, more of a context to it. And then, so the next shloka, text 11, he says, now of you must give full support to grandfather Bhishma, standing at your respective strategic points in the phalanx of the army. Alluding to grandfather is Bhishma's age, that he's getting old. And then text 12, Bhishma, the great valiant grandsire of the Kuru dynasty, the grandfather of the fighters, blew his conch shell very loudly, like the sound of the lion, giving Duryodhana joy. So, Bhagavad Prabhu pointed out that Bhishma, instead of responding to Duryodhana, instead just picked up his conch shell and blew that, which was alluding to the victory of Krishna, because the conch shell is a sign of Vishnu. And then, we hear in the text that we are reading now that they blew their conch shells. Duryodhana became joyous because it's so loud and uproarious. But then Krishna, Arjuna, Bhima, and all the Pandus blew their conch shells, it elicited a much greater response from their army. And Prabhupada points out in one of these purports, I believe, that this was a sign that the Pandavas were going to be emerge victorious. So I'm going to go on to the next text, unless anybody has something they'd like to share. Text, yeah. Where does it say this? Transcendental conch shells. Divya Shankao. Well, I don't know exactly. There is a backstory to how these personalities all acquired their conch shells. Arjuna got his conch shell from Lord Indra, which you could say Divya, which is, coming from the demigods. I don't necessarily know about transcendental, but in terms of the word that's used in the Sanskrit, and Krishna, obviously, his conch shell's transcendental, but there's also a whole pastime of how he received his conch shell too from I believe when he kills this demon, Shankyachuda. So, but Krishna, these are a lila. These are his eternal paraphernalia. He enacts these pastimes where he's receiving the Sudarshan chakra from the sun god and the conch shell from killing this demon, but they're always his. So I mean, that's just my philosophical speculation from my limited knowledge. We could ask somebody more knowledgeable. That's a good question. Because it says them too specifically, and then like the next one says Bhima blows his terrific conch shell, pound drum. And I don't know how he got his, but I mean, I was just remarking how there's a name like Panchajanya is Krishna's, Devadatta is Arjuna's, pound drum is Bhima's, and then Maharaj Yudhishthir, Nakul, Sahadev, all these great warriors have their own name for their conch shell. Just interesting point, yeah. All right, I'm going to read text 19. The blowing of these different conch shells became uproarious, and thus vibrating both in the sky and on the earth, it shattered the hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra. Purport. When Bhishma and the others on the side of Duryodhana blew their respective conch shells, there was no heartbreaking on the part of the Pandavas. Such occurrences are not mentioned, but in this particular verse it is mentioned that the hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra were shattered by the sounds vibrated by the Pandavas' party. This is due to the Pandavas and their confidence in Lord Krishna. One who takes shelter of the Supreme Lord has nothing to fear, even in the midst of the greatest calamity. This is so nice. One who takes shelter of the Supreme Lord has nothing to fear, even in the midst of the greatest calamity. So this Bhagavad Gita is so wonderful. It sets platform for us to understand everything that we are facing in life and how to overcome that. So it's exemplified by Arjuna, who is in fact the pure devotee of the Lord, who is an eternal associate of the Lord. So the Lord is just putting him in this situation to bewilder him on purpose, which later Krishna, upon Arjuna's request, takes him to the front of the battlefield to see who he's fighting. And then it says, Krishna takes him right in front of Dronacharya and Bhishma. in this book I was reading, Borijam was pointing out that, there's like millions of warriors, and Krishna like pulls them right up in front of these people who he has the strongest connection with, his grandfather and his guru. So, Krishna very, very much purposely wanted this to happen so that Krishna could speak the Bhagavad Gita. Otherwise, Krishna, what use does he have to perform all these pastimes? He could just kill demons with a snap of a finger. So similarly, if he wanted Arjuna to win the war, same thing, just a snap of the finger, just from his will, his desire. So Krishna arranges these leelas for the benefit of the living entities, both those who are getting ready to get destroyed and us who are able to hear about these happenings at the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So what do we fear? Fear is a big thing that's on everybody's mind in some shape or form. It's like, as people in society, we often don't fear death. I mean, we do deep down, but it's not on the forefront of our mind. Like we walk outside and we're thinking, oh no, I could die right now. I could die right now. In one sense it's good, but in one sense it's bad because, we never know when we could face death. But then you look at lower life forms such as birds and squirrels, and every time they go on the ground, they're like looking for food, and they're constantly just like, looking over their shoulder because they know something's going to come get me. Something's going to get me. So we think we're human. Nothing's going to come get me. I am okay. But then what are we afraid of? I remember hearing before that the biggest fear that people have, at least that they admit, is public speaking generally. To get in front of a group of people and speak, to look at them, to have them look at me. Oh no, I messed up. Oh, and everybody's going to see I'm a failure. So, what is this actually being fearful of? Just wondering. It's the false ego, because I'm not this body, I'm not this intelligence, I'm not this conditioned nature that I've manifested through the course of time, but I'm afraid when I get up in front of people because they're constantly judging me and viewing me, which is my identity of myself, but which actually is not real. So Krishna, when he begins speaking the Bhagavad Gita, when he begins instructing to Arjuna, all of his teachings are like the first 10 shlokas that he speaks, maybe 9 of them, are pretty much connecting to the point that the spirit soul is eternal, and you are not your body, you are that spirit soul. So if one truly realizes that I'm spirit soul, then what do we have to fear? Because there's no fear of death. This fear of the false ego, of people judging us or rejecting us, that won't be there, because I'm spirit and I'm part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and my duty is to render service to the Lord. Just like the fire, when there's a spark that falls out of the fire, what happens? It burns out. But when that spark's part of the fire, it's in one sense not separate, it's connected directly. So when we understand these teachings and apply them in our life, Krishna will be there within our heart to guide us and purify us, to bring us to deeper insight and deeper wisdom, so we can serve him more nicely. And the more that we are in that state, you're not distracted by material things, and you're not fearful of death, failure. You're just thinking about, what can I do for Krishna? And we have so many wonderful acharyas who embody that. Lord Chaitanya instructed his disciples to go to Vrindavan to unearth and uncover the pastime places of Lord Krishna in Vrindavan, and to write books and share the transcendental knowledge of the divine couple, Shri Radha and Krishna. And you can go to Vrindavan now. There's a city, there's buildings, there's cars, there's all these things. But Vrindavan at that time was just a jungle. There's nothing. But following the instruction of the order of the Lord, they went there and they're living under trees every night, living in just a kopin, a cloth, not having regular food, what to speak of a kitchen to cook, and eat all these palatable, nice things. Completely surrendered. They don't care what happens, but they do care what happens if it's in connection to favor of the Lord. But as for their own body and their well-being, they're completely separated. And this is exemplified where Sanatana Goswami, his body was wretched with all these oozing sores and pains, and it was horrible. And imagine somebody walk in the temple room right now and their cloth is all ragged and dirty and they have like sores that are oozing pus, and would you want to go up and like hug this person, talk to him? Lord Chaitanya would go run up and hug Sanatana Goswami when he had this going on. He wanted to hug him and reciprocate with his love for him. And Sanatana Goswami was so far distraught by that the Lord would do this. He said, better I'll go kill myself. So he was planning how to kill himself. And you know how he was going to do that? He went to Jagannath Puri, and he was going to throw himself under Jagannath's Rath. Have you ever seen the real Ratha Yatra? Oh, you should look up a video. There's giant carts, giant wheels. Millions of people, You've heard of the word juggernaut? You know where this word actually comes from? When the British were in India, they were in Jagannath Puri, and they saw the Ratha Yatra, which is like the biggest festival, the biggest gathering. And everybody is yelling, Jai Jagannath, Jai Jagannath. And, they couldn't understand what they were saying. They thought they were saying juggernaut. So the word juggernaut means like big, strong, immovable object. It comes from the Jagannath Rath, Jagannath's cart, of them pulling that because it's so big and nearly immovable. So that's a nice connection. So Sanatana Goswami wanted to throw himself under the wheel of this to kill himself. But then Lord Chaitanya, he knows, he's Krishna, he knows what's going on in everybody's heart and everybody's consciousness. And he chastised Sanatana Goswami, saying, you think that body is yours? This body is mine. You'd be destroying somebody else's property. That's sinful. You think you can get out of your miseries just by doing that? So in this way, he instructed Sanatana Goswami that, our body is not actually ours, it's the Lord's. And as we approach the Lord through a guru and serve him, connect to Krishna through the guru, actually, our body doesn't belong to ourselves, it belongs to the guru. It's the guru's instrument to engage in Krishna's service. And the more that we beg, pray, or adhere to the guru's teaching to personally instruct us, to utilize us in Krishna's service, this is for our highest welfare, which is beyond this false ego and all this other nonsense, because the guru is going to engage us on the spiritual platform. All right, maybe we can read one more text and purport, unless anybody has any questions or comments or thoughts. Yes. Really? I don't know about that, but that's that's nice. Yes, Lord Brahma, when he's begging forgiveness from Krishna, he says, Tate nukampam susamikshamano punjana evatma kritam vipakam hridvag vapurbir viditan namaste jivetis mukti sapade sadaya jiva mukti pade sadaya bhak. That one who goes on constantly endeavoring, suffering the results of his past karma, hridvag vapurbir, with his heart, his words, his body, his mind. He keeps engaging in Krishna's service, glorifying Krishna. Then mukti, liberation, is his rightful claim. So yes, this is the way that the pure devotee sees things, that whatever's going on bad, it's just due to my poor behavior, and it's just the material nature, and I just tolerate whatever's going on, constantly thinking of Krishna, taking shelter of Krishna, and Krishna becomes very pleased. So that was a very nice point. So text 20, O king, at that time Arjuna, the son of Pandu, who was seated in his chariot, his flag marked with Hanuman, took up his bow and prepared to shoot his arrows. Looking at the sons of Dhritarashtra, O king, Arjuna then spoke to Rishikesh, Krishna, these words. Purport: the battle was just about to begin. It is understood from the above statement that the sons of Dhritarashtra were more or less disheartened by the unexpected arrangement of military force by the Pandavas, who were guided by the direct instructions of Lord Krishna on the battlefield. The emblem of Hanuman on the flag of Arjuna is another sign of victory, because Hanuman cooperated with Lord Ram in the battle between Ram and Ravana, and Lord Ram emerged victorious. Now both Ram and Hanuman were present on the chariot of Arjuna to help him. Lord Krishna is Rama himself, and whoever Lord Ram is, his eternal servitor Hanuman, and his eternal consort Sita, the goddess of fortune, are present. Therefore, Arjuna had no cause to fear any enemies whatsoever, and above all, the Lord of the senses, Lord Krishna, was personally present to give him direction. Thus all good counsel was available to Arjuna in the matter of executing the battle, in such auspicious conditions arranged by the Lord for his eternal devotee lay the signs of assured victory. Wow, this just makes me think of Srila Prabhupada, how Srila Prabhupada appeared, and he had his astrology report done when he was a kid, and they said he would travel all over the world, he would open many temples, 108 temples. It's like all the signs were there, and he just had to endure it, and push for it. So if we want to achieve greatness in devotional service, not meaning that I want name and fame or something for myself, but to purify our heart, to render nice service to Krishna, to Guru, to Srila Prabhupada's movement, to create devotees, to build a project, whatever it may be. Adversities will be there, difficulties will be there, problems will be there. So we have to take shelter of Krishna and keep pushing and keep praying and keep depending on the mercy of Krishna and in the Vaishnavas. Who are we by ourselves? I think I was talking about this last time I was giving class, to the degree that we think we're great or special or that we could do something on our own, I got this, I'm good. This is just a big sign of our false ego. But to the degree that we realize our dependence on the Vaishnavas, this is purity. When I was talking about Lord Chaitanya sending the 6 Goswamis to Vrindavan, I was also thinking about Narottama Das Thakur. Narottama Das Thakur, when he was a kid, he was like a teenager. He had this transcendental dream, vision. I don't want to go into the whole story, but it prompted him to leave home, and he ran to Vrindavan. So he lived in West Bengal, and Vrindavan is like way on the other side. It's like 800 miles away. He's a teenager, and then he just had this urge, this desire to be with the Lord, to go to Vrindavan, to associate with the Lord's associates. So can you imagine, running through the jungles day and night? You're a kid, you grew up in a kingdom, a royal prince. You don't know how to take care of yourself, but due to his desire to connect to Krishna, he wasn't fearful of any of this. He just pushed through it all. And I was trying to remember why I brought this up. Narottama Das Thakur, later in his life, after he received so much blessings and mercy from Jiva Goswami, from Lokanath Goswami, and all these wonderful devotees, he exemplified really being humble and taking shelter of the Vaishnavas. They really cherished these friendships. There's certain bhajans that we sing when great Vaishnavas on their disappearance day, where Narottama Das Thakur is lamenting for all of their association, in some kind of Mayavad or pseudo spiritualist. They could hear this and be like, oh, he's lamenting for all these people. He doesn't get it. He doesn't understand spiritual bliss because he's affected by this. But this is a Vaishnava to, lament and really declare our dependence, in these great souls that are surrounding us and who have laid the tracks to follow on this path of devotional service. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrita Ki Jai. Does anybody have any last comments or questions? Right, Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai, Pancha Kapatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Chapatitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.